Okay, we got this cleaned up. I've seen several videos of people with Dolomites who have advised their viewers to take this assembly apart and grease it because there's very little grease in it. That's been my experience too. There was grease in here, but not very much, and nowhere near as much as we're going to put in here. These will be packed with grease and you won't even see these bearing cages. When I took this apart, there was you could just see little bits of grease between the bearings. And even this left side cup here, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but it appears that the bearings have worn away this coloring, unless it comes that way. I'm not really sure, but the point being, we need a lot more grease in here than came from the factory. If you have a Dolomite, probably if you have any bike, you should probably take that apart right away and re-grease these. It's generally not that difficult to do. There's tons of videos on YouTube that'll show you how to disassemble and pack grease into whatever type of crank assembly you have. I bought this Finish Line premium grease on mine. That's what we're going to use. Parts are already cleaned. We'll take this grease and we're going to just put pretty much a bunch of it in here, and then we'll smush it down with our fingers in a minute. So I'm just pushing grease in here. Then you want to make sure that the bearings go in with the side where you can see the bearings. You want that to be up against the inside of the cup, and this side with the edge here to be against the assembly. So we push this in there. A lot of grease is mushing out the other side. We'll fix that as we go. All right, and we're going to put more grease on top of this. So we're just like literally covering everything with grease. All right, keeping this side where the bearing is most exposed. You want that down into the cup. Smush that down. We get some grease kind of coming out the hole. We can push that back up a bit. Boom, tons of grease. Now, different videos will show you different ways to assemble this. One I watched, the guy said to put this part in first, and then you put the bearings on the spindle and put it in there. That's not necessary, I don't think. I think I would rather know that the bearings are packed pretty well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this left side part on first with the packed bearing. And then I'm going to put the spindle in, and I'm going to assemble the other side. Now, I've already taken an old toothbrush and gotten in there and gotten that dirt out. So we're just going to try and film and do this at the same time. I am not left-handed. I put a little bit of grease on the threads. Probably a good idea. We'll worry about cleaning it off later. Make sure to follow your directions. given in the Sick Bike Parts PDF. If you don't have this PDF, there's a link in the description to where you can get it. One thing that is not mentioned in the directions is that if you have a fat tire bike, you will not be using this cartridge that comes with the kit. This information can be found where you purchase the kit. Somewhere in the middle of a bunch of text, they'll tell you that if you have a fat tire bike, you're going to use your original spindle, your original bottom bracket assembly. Okay, so it's a good idea. Go ahead and take that apart and clean the parts and re-grease it. Even if you have the fat bike, it's a good idea. If you don't have a fat bike, you'll be using this, or you can use this. If you do have a fat bike, you're not going to use it. Step 3 in the directions, part 3, which is all about assembling the freewheel and putting the larger of the two sprockets, the 44 tooth, onto the clear plastic chain guard. Now, I already did this. It's pretty simple. You're going to have these 5 screws that are going to go in these 5 holes, the outermost holes. Now, I would suggest when you assemble it, these are not machine screws. These are more like a wood screw. They're pointy, they have a sharp edge that's meant to cut into this plastic and really get a grip on it. 2 of these screws went in very flat for me. 3 of them did not. The 2 that went in very well, I made sure that I put the 2 pieces down on a hard flat surface and screw them in as straight as you can. There's probably a little bit of plastic inside the holes of some of these. If you have a very small drill bit, that'll fit in there easily, not bigger than the hole. You don't want to enlarge that hole at all. But if you have a drill bit that fits perfectly or a little small, you might want to put it in there and twist it a little bit. You might want to take a piece of stiff metal wire and just poke around in there, see what you can do about cleaning out anything that might be in there. There may not be anything in there to begin with. These other 3 that I did, I kind of did it in my hand like this, and maybe I started the screw a little bit slanted. So it was pretty difficult to get 3 of them down flat enough. This, you know, you run the risk of breaking this plastic. So definitely put it down on a firm, flat surface and try and screw it in as perpendicular as you can. Get those in there tight. Okay, for me it is officially the next day. After I stopped recording last night, I decided to practice putting this thing together so that it wouldn't be a nightmare for me to edit the video. And one of the things I discovered was that you want to ignore the Sick Bike Parts directions that tell you to thread this onto the freewheel as your first step. That just causes a lot of problems trying to get all these bolts in. Do that last. What we want to remember before we get started is that we need access to these threads, right, when we're finished. And that's going to be done by taking the thread side of this freewheel, putting it down on the inside. That's what it should look like from the outside. Now we can take our 5 bolts, drop them down. You can actually put the bolts in first and then slide this on top of it. Doesn't really matter. I've successfully done it both ways. Find that on my future blooper reel. Okay, so here's what's with this tomato basil soup. It might be my lunch, but for right now, I'm going to use it to give myself a raised work surface here. All right, here we are. Now we're going to take these 5 nuts, and remember, these nuts are larger than these bolts. They are meant as a spacer. You might have given them a little spin, helps them drop down. Sometimes it's not necessary. You can tap it, whatever. They just go down there. Bada bing, bada boom. Now we take the smaller sprocket and we find the beveled edge. Here's your flat edge. Here's your beveled edge. Easy to see. This beveled edge needs to face the other beveled edge. A little bit of wiggle. Get these bolts lined up. I did have trouble with this last night too. It almost seems like, for me, these holes are not entirely spaced properly, but the little bit of nudging, there we are. Now, I'm not going to complete these next steps because I'm going to do something different. But your next step is to put these washers on, and then finally these nuts here, and then you'll have that, and you can easily thread on the crank arm. If you do that first, you're going to have this wobbly surface that's going to just create a lot of nightmares for you. All right, so I'm going to undo part of this because I'm going to show you an idea that I have that may or may not work. I'm going to go with it. In the future, if I find this has caused me a lot of troubles, I'll come back and put a note in the description that I decided against it. But for now, here's what I'm going to try. Rather than use these nuts as a spacer, actually I may not need to use them. For now, I'm going to take them off. I've decided to take the Dolomite's original Freewheel chain guard, 2-piece chain guard, and use that on this smaller sprocket. This is the same size as the Dolomite has. Right, it's the same 36 tooth, I believe. So what I'm going to do is, one side has these fake plastic screws. This is the side that was originally facing outward on your bike, and it just makes it look like it's screwed on. The actual screws go in the back of the other piece. But this is the flat side. I don't want to deal with the little bit of a raised bump here on these fake screws. So I'm going to put this flat side down, which means my bevel needs to be down on this side. So I'm going to reattach this sprocket. I'm going to attach to the original chain guard. As I said, I can't be certain that this is going to work. If you want to skip it, skip it. If it's the future and I'm telling you in the description that it works great, maybe you want to try it. I need a screwdriver. Tighten these up. Actually, I should probably use Loctite on these. I'll take this apart later and do that. All right, so here's the plan. This setup here, I believe, provides the same amount of space as these nuts did. Those same amount of space as those nuts provided. Maybe even a little more. They say in the directions, the idea is to create as much room between the sprockets as possible. The advantage to this is that you get your built-in chain guide, right? This is going to be better than using a chainstay, in my opinion. And with the Dolomite small triangle, who knows? Maybe I'll run into trouble trying to use one of them the chainstay that comes with the kit. Now, so I think this will work just like this. What I was thinking about doing, let's see if we can get you in here. Where the screws are, the screw heads on the other side of this, where this silver screw head is, I was thinking maybe I could get a circle cutter for a drill, a small one, and cut this plastic out so that all of this plastic is resting flat against this chain guard and not just on these 5 screw heads. It may not be necessary. I would have to check and make sure. Perhaps that would cause trouble. Maybe that makes this too close to the chain. I really want to try this because I think this is a great idea. In theory. In theory, I know it's a great idea. It's an awesome idea. But will it work? Will it cause problems? I don't know. But I definitely want to try it. I'm going to go with it and see. If it does cause trouble, it's not going to be a super big deal. Yeah, I'm going to go with it. I think this could be a really great idea if it works. And so we'll find out. Somewhere down the road in the future, we will both know. All right, that's it for today, this episode. See you next time. And I'm back once again. Update here. What I did to get this to work is, instead of putting those washers on top here underneath this nut, I added the washer to, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but I added the washer underneath the stack nuts that are underneath the smaller sprocket. And it works really well. I ordered some more washers. I still have about 1.5 millimeters of room here, so I'll still be able to get another 1 millimeter washer underneath these top nuts. And if I really need to, I can take these screws here, those screw heads that were that the plastic was touching and deforming the ring, and I can grind them flat just a little bit. If I need a little more clearance, I'll just put a sanding disc or a carbide bit or something on there and flatten them out a little bit. So this is gonna work, I'm pretty darn sure. In my next video, I'll have this back together. I'll take the bike out and you know, we'll see how it's working. I think it's gonna be great. See you next time.